Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Watchdives WD1969 Pro. This watch is available from watchdives.com for €100. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in this black plastic pelican style case, which has 4 clips. I'll show you the interior. So as you can see, the underside to the hinged lid has a foam protective panel, and in the base we have a second foam protective panel, and the 2 foam panels do a good job of protecting the watch in transit from any damage. It's a good quality watch box. Watchdives deserve credit because they could have used the default option and the cost-cutting measure of a cardboard watch box as per Pagani design with the PD1661, which is a similar price point piece at €100. But this plastic pelican style case is definitely better quality than the cardboard watch boxes that Pagani design are using, and Watchdives deserve full credit for that. With regards to the items that come with the watch, you also get this bracelet resizing tool, and I'll show it to you. Now again, I want to give credit here because they could have used a plastic bodied bracelet resizing tool. This is made from die cast metal, so the quality is better, and it's got a large knurled finish to the handle. As you can see, nice chamfer on it, no sharp edges, and the thread action is smooth. And this works very well because it's got a stainless steel push pin, and it does work to push out the pins in the bracelet links to resize the bracelet. It's good to get this included, and it's good to get a die cast metal bracelet resizing tool which is quality rather than a plastic one. Now the other thing I like, and I want to give credit to Watchdives for, is they have included 3 stainless steel push pins to replace in the tool. For example, if you get the alignment incorrect and you bend the tip of the push pin in the tool, it's defunct. So this means that you can replace them. Now they're stainless steel, they've got screw threads which screw into the tool, and it's good to have 3 spares in addition to the one that comes in the tool. Lastly, you also get this Watchdives Shield branded warranty card, and on the reverse there's space to fill in the date of purchase, the watch model, and the signature or dealer's stamp. Now I'm pleased to report the WD1690 Pro, like all Watchdives pieces, is covered by a 2-year international warranty, usually in the low tier at €100. For example, with the Pagani design PD1661, a 12-month warranty is expected, but to get 2 years of international warranty is exceptional, and Watchdives deserve full credit for that. So the watch is clearly an homage to the Tudor Pelagos 39, very similar proportions to the Pelagos 39. We have a 39mm case diameter, we have a lug-to-lug measurement of 47mm, a thickness of 11.8mm, and a lug width of 20mm. The oyster-style bracelet tapers from 20mm at the lugs down to 16mm at the 2-button push clasp, and as you can see, the 2-button push clasp is signed to a good standard with high-definition engraving of the new updated Watchdives Trident Shield logo. Now, comparing it to the early Watchdives Shield logo, I think the Trident Shield is much more aesthetically pleasing. I do like both, but I prefer the updated Trident logo, and there's good continuity because they have the same Trident Shield on the clasp, the dial, and also the crown, rather than using the Watchdives Shield. So, double dome sapphire crystal with clear AR coating. One thing I really like about it is there's a nice low dome to the sapphire crystal. They haven't used a boxed top hat style, which would spoil it, because this is clearly an homage to the Pelagos 39, and I like that they didn't just use a flat sapphire crystal. The double dome sapphire crystal works very well. It's not too tall, and it doesn't add significant thickness to the piece. This is only 11.8, so it's a very thin piece, bearing in mind it's 200 meters. Clear AR coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the double dome sapphire crystal, so the clarity is excellent. The matte black dial is very aesthetically pleasing, but also good because it's not as reflective and shiny as a black enamel dial. It also fits the aesthetic of this being a Pelagos 39 homage, because matte black is more like the Tudor finish of the dial rather than using a sunburst finish or alternatively a glossy black enamel dial. So the WD1690 Pro is available in 2 colour options, blue or black. I think this black version is better looking. The other thing is it's available with two dial options. You can have round indices as per a Black Bay 58, or you can have snowflake indices with square indices like this as per a Pelagos 39. Now this is subjective. Some collectors will like the round indices used on the Black Bay 38. I personally prefer the snowflake indices because this is an homage to the Pelagos 39. It's not an homage to the Black Bay 58 respectively. Correctly proportioned indices, and the snowflake handset is also correctly proportioned. I want to give credit to Watchdives here because often low tier Chinese brands at €100, they get the proportions and the dimensions of the handset incorrect. If you look closely at the minute hand, which is sword shaped, the tip of the minute hand extends all the way to the minute ticks on the chapter ring, as it should do. If you look at the snowflake second hand, the tip of the second hand extends all the way to the chapter ring too. So they've got the length and the proportion of the snowflake handset correct for a 39mm piece. They're not undersized and they're not too short, and they look right with the indices which are printed. I like the layout of the dial with the trident shield at 12 o'clock and simply the water resistance rating at 6. Just the right amount of information. There's no unnecessary text or specification to clutter the dial. I'm just going to move the minute hand out of the way, and then you'll be able to see the text at the bottom of the dial better. So 200 meters equals 660 feet, and the quality of the printing to the Trident Shield logo and also the water resistance rating, as well as the minute ticks on the chapter ring, are very good. Nice 3D effect to the chapter ring and the dial as per the Pelagos, and I think they've done a really good job of it. So I think the dial is very well executed. Rather than just being a flat printed dial, it's got that nice 3D effect of the chapter ring, and the printed indices, which are BGW9, are set into the chapter ring around the edge of the dial. So the 3D effect is very aesthetically pleasing. Now, I understand that Watchdives are going to update the dial used in the WD1969 Pro. They're going to add Diver Pro at 6 o'clock above the water resistance rating. I personally prefer the cleaner, minimalist look of this version, but this is subjective. Some collectors might prefer the addition of the text Diver Pro above the water resistance rating. Coin-edged, solid 316L grade stainless steel bezel, as you can see. Nice low profile finish to it. Nice large chamfer to the top edge, so the top of the teeth on the coin edge bezel don't feel sharp, they don't dig into the index finger and thumb, and it looks very well finished. Nice fine teeth to the coin edge finishing, and the low profile proportions of it work very well with the low domed double domed sapphire crystal. The longitudinal brush satin finishing to the flanks is excellent, nice fine grained finish to it, and there's a nice mirror polished bevel to the edge of the flanks, which marks the transition between the tops of the lugs and the brush satin finish flanks. One detail I really like is they have done a good job of mirror polishing the top edge of the crown guards, as you can see, and the top edge is mirror polished to a very high standard, and that continues down into, they've blended it into the mirror polished bevel, so the attention to detail is good. The mirror polished bevel is very nice, and also the mirror polishing to the tops of the crown guards works very well. It's blended very nicely into the bevel, and the crown guards are very good. No sharp points to them. They're very well finished. So let's test the bezel execution. 120 click unidirectional bezel, as one would expect. Aluminium bezel insert is very aesthetically pleasing. Nice loud audible clicks. Medium resistance. It feels lighter than a Seiko 5KX, but I like the loud heavy clicks. It feels firmer than on a Pagani design PD1661, which has a very light bezel action. Feels even all the way through the 360 degrees. It doesn't get lighter or tighter, which is good. No lateral side-side play, which is excellent. Minimal back play, which is excellent. Let's just check the alignment. The 60 clicks are nice and firm. I like the resistance. One more click. Perfect. The Lume pip and triangle perfectly aligned with the 12 o'clock index and the 60-minute tick on the chapter ring. So it is good bezel execution. No lateral side-to-side play, minimal back play, and also perfect alignment. This is a €100 price point piece. Compare this to the Pagani design PD1661, which you'll all be familiar with. That has lateral side-to-side play, significant back play, and the alignment is often incorrect. But this gets it right, and Watchdives deserve credit because it's a medium resistance. It's not too tight and it's not too loose. The bezel execution feels smooth but tight enough not to have excessive play or back play. The alignment is right and I like it, so I think that it feels good. I like the loud audible clicks and it feels smooth all the way round. Right, so let's test the screw down crown execution. Solid 316L grade stainless steel crown, coin edge finish. The coin edge finishing is fine and it matches the fine coin edge finishing to the bezel. So it's good that they didn't use a knurled crown because that wouldn't have continuity of design. The proportions of the crown are good. It doesn't stick out too much from the crown guards. It looks the right size for a 39mm head of the piece. Nice chamfer to it and good detailing because we have the embossed trident shield, as you can see, with a matte bead blasted effect to the background, and it's very good. It doesn't feel sharp or scratchy. It's actually very well finished. It's deburred to a good standard. The embossing is very good. It's high quality finishing and they deserve credit again because this is a low tier piece at €100. The crown is very well executed. So let's test unscrewing it. Now it feels smooth but it's not silky smooth, so there is room for improvement with regards to the quality control and the tolerances, the interface of the internal thread and the external thread of the crown tube. So it does feel smooth but not silky smooth. One can feel the friction of the stainless steel against stainless steel of the crown and the crown tube. So it's good enough, but I would like to see some refinements on it. But it doesn't take many turns to unscrew it, and I do like the execution of it. It doesn't feel too loose or too tight, but one can feel the friction of the threading. So this is powered by the Seiko VH31 quartz, and therefore there's no date complication. We don't have a date wheel beneath the dial. There's no phantom date setting position, which is good. Pulling it out to the first click position hacks the movement. As you can see, the snowflake second hand has now stopped dead, so it's possible to set the time precisely to the second. Very light resistance to the Seiko VH31 quartz. Feels very smooth, clockwise and anti-clockwise. There is some slight back play, which is a characteristic of the VH31 quartz. When you rotate the crown clockwise and anti-clockwise, there is some back play in the gearing. You can see it takes some time for the minute hand to respond. It doesn't immediately move when you rotate the crown, so that's something to bear in mind. But it does feel very smooth, very low friction in the gearing, and it's a pleasure to set the time, light resistance to it, although one does have to take up the slack of the back play as I've detailed. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click and that restarts the movement. As you can see, the snowflake second hand begins to tick around the dial. Now, one thing I like about the VH31 quartz is it doesn't tick. It runs at 4 beats per second. It's a 2 Hz movement, and therefore the second hand does have a very nice 4 beats tick to it. It doesn't just tick every second. So I like the fact it's 2 Hz and it looks more like an automatic rather than a quartz that ticks every second. So it's got that 4 beats stutter to it and it does look very nice. So let's test screwing the crown back down. Immediate thread pickup, so there's a perfect interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. So the interface, the meshing of the threads is good, but it just doesn't feel silky smooth. You can feel the friction of the stainless steel rubbing against the stainless steel. So there is room for improvement, although it is good quality. I like the immediate thread pickup and the threading does feel smooth. Right, so I'll show you the case back. Solid 316L grade stainless steel case back, longitudinally brushed satin finishing to the centre section, coin edge teeth, and it's got a slight bubble back profile to the circumference, but if you look at the centre section, it's perfectly flat. And this is something I really like about this being Seiko VH31 quartz powered, rather than using the default option of the Seiko NH35A automatic, which would give it significant thickness because one would have to have a bubble back case back to clear the rotor. The benefit of using a quartz VH31 is that one can have a very flat case back, and that reduces the thickness of this WD1969 to only 11.8 millimeters. So very low profile, very smooth against the wrist. I like that it's sterile with no engraving because it feels very smooth and comfortable to wear the piece for long periods of time. However, I want to bring to your attention the main negative of this watch. Quick release spring bars. Now, normally one would say quick release spring bars are positive because one doesn't need a spring bar tool to exchange the bracelet for a rubber strap, for example. But in this case, the quick releases on the spring bars, they stick out, and also they have flat head screws in them. There are two styles to quick release spring bars. They either have domed balls on the top of the screws, and therefore they're very comfortable because the domed caps to them don't rub against the wrist, they're not sharp. The other alternative is this, which has flathead screws for the quick releases, and the problem with the flathead screws on this one is they're sharp. So all four of these quick releases are sharp, and they dig into the wrist. You can feel them scratching against the wrist, and it's a real shame because the flat sterile case back is very comfortable against the wrist. It feels very smooth. There's no sharp edges to the coin edge finishing or no burrs to it, but these quick release spring bars, the flathead screws, are sharp and they do scratch the wrist. But on a positive note, they're very easy to remove. You can simply unscrew the quick release levers from the spring bar, and that then deletes the problem. But it's just a shame because all four of them feel sharp and scratchy against the wrist. I actually would prefer to see conventional spring bars used on this piece because that would delete the problem. Alternatively, I would like to see Watchdives update these quick release spring bars to using a domed cap, a ball on the top, which is the alternative rather than the flathead screw. Now, of course, it's easy to use the flathead screw when fitting these because they simply screw in the levers, but the ball ones are more difficult to fit, but they are smoother against the wrist. So these flathead screw ones are scratchy, and that is the main negative of the piece. The solid mill 316L grade stainless steel clasp is very well executed, beautiful luster to the 316L grade stainless steel, no sharp edges, doesn't have sharp corners, but however, we do have some quality control here. If you look, there is some play in the pin which goes through on the hinge pin to the body of the clasp. So there's room for refinement, but one has to expect some cost-cutting measures at this price point. But you can see the play there. So that hinge pin needs to be tightened up. This one here in the centre, there's also some play laterally. I'll just put my hand behind it and I'll get the camera to focus on it better. You can see the play there is significant. And the third pin going into the end of the bracelet, we also have some lateral play. So the cumulative effect of all three hinge pins having play is it rattles. So I wouldn't say it's excessive, but however, the quality control, the tolerances could be tightened up to improve the three hinge pins, but one has to factor in this is €100, it's a low tip piece. These kind of QC issues they are to be expected at this price point. Now with regards to the bracelet, very well finished, beautiful luster to the 316L grade stainless steel. The brush satin finishing is fine, the grain finish is very good, and the mirror polishing to the flanks contrasts very well. It's also done to a good standard. No sharp edges, no burrs. The edges to the flanks are not sharp, they don't scratch the wrist, doesn't pull arm hair, articulates smoothly, doesn't have any stiff links. It is well finished. But however, the second negative of this watch is the bracelet rattles, because we have a mixture of screw pins and push pins used, which I'll explain. But the majority of the links are push pin links, as you can see, and they have some play longitudinally, laterally, and also up and down. And the cumulative effect across the bracelet is it rattles. I'll just show you the other side. Same problem. Each of the links has longitudinal, lateral, and up and down play. So in every direction, the push pins are not tight enough. I would like to see Watchdives upgrade to using screw pins throughout. Now, I say throughout because if you look, either side of the clasp, we've got one screw pin in the end link, and on the other side, we've got a screw pin in the end link. So it's good because, for example, you can exchange this clasp for a glide lock style clasp, which I previously reviewed. The Watchdives glide lock style clasp will fit this piece because it's a 20 to 16mm oyster style bracelet. So it's good that they've got screw pins to make changing the clasp an option. But we have screw pins in the end links of the bracelet, but the rest of the links are push pins. Now, I wish that Watchdives had used screw pins all the way through, rather than a mixture of using a screw pin in the end link on either side of the clasp, as you can see, and then all the rest of the links are push pins. I think bracelets should have one or the other, but not both. Either screw pins throughout, alternatively push pins throughout, but not both at the same time. And it's a clear cost-cutting measure because screw pins are more expensive, it's more expensive in production cost to thread the links, and the screw pins themselves are more expensive than push pins. And Watchdives have clearly cut the production costs by using some push pins rather than continuing the screw pin all the way through the bracelet, rather than just using 2 screw links. So that's a disappointment, but again, one has to be realistic. This is a €100 piece, and one has to expect some cost-cutting measures. I do like the clasp because it is very well executed, and I like that it's got 5 micro adjustments, so it's easy to get the perfect fit, bearing in mind the bracelet doesn't have any half links. So I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Nice positive click, and I really like the firm spring-loaded action of the 2 triggers, and it snaps shut with a good positive click. Beautiful luster to the body of the clasp, and I like the shield trident logo, as you can see. So it's a compact case, 47mm lug-to-lug measurements, and it's only 11.8mm thick. The 39mm head of the piece does give enough wrist presence, so this will suit you if you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist or a 7 to 8 inch wrist respectively. It does have enough wrist presence for a 7 to 8 inch wrist, and it doesn't feel too thick or top heavy for a smaller wrist of 6 to 7 inches, so it's suitable for collectors with all wrist sizes. The use of female pivoted end links is the correct decision. It does work very well because it pulls the end link in the bracelet snug to the wrist. They could have used male end links, which would have extended the lug-to-lug measurement. 47 is close to perfection. I regard 48 to be the perfect lug-to-lug measurement, regardless of whether you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist or a 7 to 8 inch wrist respectively. At 47, it is close to the perfect 48. Now, one detail I really like about this piece, above all else, is it is low profile due to the flat, sterile case back. 11.8 is very thin for a 200 meter water resistant piece. Even with the double dome sapphire crystal, which is low profile, you can see just how thin this is. Needless to say, it will easily slip underneath a shirt cuff if you wear business shirts. Anything under 13mm feels very well balanced. It doesn't feel too tall and top heavy on wrist. At 11.8, this is a very thin, low profile piece. I like the slender, low profile flanks. They've made the correct decision, because had they used the NH35A automatic, this would be 13mm thick and it would be top heavy. But this is very low profile at only 11.8, and it also doesn't have the tall slab sides that often is the case with NH35A low tier Chinese made watches. They have very thick slab sides to the flanks. The body of the case is not too thick, it's not too tall. The flanks are actually low profile and slender, and the 47 lug to lug is a compact case. Another thing they've got correct is the taper. 20 to 16 is the perfect taper for a 39mm head of the piece, and you can see I haven't sized the bracelet, but I can easily slide an index finger underneath the bracelet and clasp. This will easily fit up to an 8.5 inch wrist with no difficulties whatsoever, and I'm on position 5 out of 5, the maximum extension on the clasp. So it's good to see enough links in the bracelet, so it suits for collectors with a larger wrist of 8 inches plus. Very comfortable piece to wear, feels very well balanced, 139 grams. Anything beneath 150 grams is comfortable to wear for long periods of time, and at 139 with all the links in the oyster style bracelet, it's a very well balanced piece. The 39mm head of the piece balances the 20 to 16 oyster style bracelet, so the proportions are perfect. I love the taper of the lugs and also the large mirror polished bezels, which marks the transition between the top of the lugs and the flanks. So it's a very aesthetically pleasing piece. Now, this is subjective with regards to the bezel. I like the matte finish to the aluminium bezel insert as per Tudor Black Bay 58. Some collectors would prefer to see ceramic use because it's harder and scratch resistant, but I like the vintage aesthetic of aluminium. I like the mirror polished Arabic numerals and the mirror polished quarter on the bezel, 15-minute ticks, and I think it suits it. Even though it's a Pelagos 39 homage, it should have a ceramic bezel insert. The aluminium does look very vintage, so nice low profile to the coin edge finishing to the bezel. It's just a great looking piece, very comfortable to wear, feels balanced, doesn't feel top heavy, proportions are correct. Right, so let's do a lume test and we'll see how the lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it has not disappointed. This uses BGW9 on the Lume pip, on the aluminium bezel insert, the snowflake indices which are printed, and also the snowflake handset. Credit where credit's due. This is clearly 5 to 6 layers of BGW9. Now, compare this to the poor quality Luminova one gets on a Pagani design PD1661, which we are all familiar with. That is very disappointing. The Luminova is weak, it fades very quickly, and it's just a cost-cutting measure. Watchdives have not cut costs with this. This is clearly good quality BGW9. Perfect colour tone match between the Lume pip on the aluminium bezel insert, the snowflake indices, and also the snowflake handset. It's glowing brightly, and it will continue to glow for a good length of time. This is clearly not 3 to 4 layers. This is 5 to 6 layers, both on the indices and also the snowflake hands. So I like the blue tone of the BGW9, and I also like that the colour match is correct. The snowflake hands and the indices look the same tone of white. Often with low tier €100 price point watches, there's a colour mismatch. In daylight conditions, the hands or the indices look yellowed, the Lume doesn't look white, but this BGW9 in daylight conditions looks pure white on both the indices and also the snowflake hands, so they've got that correct. There's no colour tone mismatch in daylight. In nighttime conditions, you can see the blue tone is also correct. It matches because we've got 5 to 6 on both the indices and 5 to 6 layers on the hands. So it's very good performance. Now, far better than on a Pagani design PD1661. So this is a main strong point of the watch, the quality of the BGW9 they're using. It's very unusual to get this on a €100 low tier piece, this kind of strength of BGW9, 5 to 6 layers. And I really like it. I think they deserve credit for that. Right, so let's discuss the movement use because it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. Now, Watchdives deserve credit because they could have used the default option of the Seiko NH35A automatic. That would have made this piece 13mm in thickness, but they didn't. They used the correct decision of the Seiko VH31 quartz, which is a thin quartz movement. So the VH31 was made in 2015. It's got 9 years of service at this stage. No reliability issues whatsoever. It is a robust, reliable, well-proven workhorse quartz movement made in Japan. It has 2 joules and it runs at 14,400 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 2 Hz. So, as it's a 2 Hz quartz, it has 4 beats per second, and as I've detailed, the main benefit of a 2 Hz quartz running with 4 beats per second is if you look at the snowflake second hand, it doesn't tick every second, which is normally the case with quartz movements. It has 4 beats per second, so it stutters, but it gives more of an impression of an automatic with a smooth sweep to the second hand running at 4 Hz. It's not as smooth as a 4 Hz movement automatic running at 28,800 vibrations per hour, but 2 Hz does give a smoother sweep to the second hand rather than having it tick every second, and I like the 4 beats per second. I think it looks very aesthetically pleasing. I prefer it to a tick every second, so it's good. The stated accuracy of the VH31 is plus or minus 15 seconds per month. So just consider that for a moment. That's not plus or minus 15 seconds per day or per week. That is per month. That is incredible accuracy. It has hacking, as I've demonstrated. You can stop the second hand dead to set the time precisely to the second. And the VH31 has a 2-year battery life, which is very good. So potentially you could purchase this piece and wear the watch for 2 years without having to change the battery. I think it's perfectly acceptable to have a 2-year battery life on a quartz movement. Are there any negatives to it? None whatsoever. Plus or minus 15 seconds per month is excellent. 2-year battery life is good, and the 4 beats per second gives a nice stutter to the second hand. So it's a good, reliable workhorse movement made in Japan, and 9 years of service. It's excellent. I like the Seiko VH31. The main benefit above all else is it's very thin. And this is only 11.8mm thick as a result, even with a double dome sapphire crystal. They could have even made it thinner using a flat sapphire crystal, but the double dome sapphire crystal is aesthetically pleasing. Flat case back due to using the VH31 versus the NH35A. So 11.8, it's very thin, and I like it because it's also very light. It's only 139 grams. Had they used the NH35 WD1969, that would have increased the heft of the piece. So it makes the watch light, it makes it comfortable to wear, and it also makes it low profile, therefore it's not top heavy. The VH31 is the correct choice for this WD1690 Pro. I think that it's better than them using an NH35A and making it 13mm or above in thickness. So lastly, I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch should meet two criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at respective price point. So this is €100. It is unquestionably excellent quality and unquestionably excellent value at €100. It's got very strong specification. The Seiko VH31 Quartz is an excellent movement. The BGW9 is outstanding. The clear AR coating is outstanding. Bezel execution is good. Screw down crown execution is good. There are only two negatives to this piece. The play in the bracelet, because of the push pins used and the tolerances aren't tight enough. And the other main negative is the sharp flathead screws used in the quick release levers on the quick release spring bars. But they're easy to remove and that deletes the problem. So the two negatives are the spring bars and the push pins in the bracelet, because the bracelet rattles. Other than that, it is an excellent piece and excellent quality. At €100, this is far better than the PD1661, which has no AR coating, weak luminova, and sharp edges on the bracelet and clasp. So this is a better piece. The Lume performance, the AR coating, and the movement is better. It's low profile as well. So I think this has the edge over low tier watches like the PD1661. So I'm going to declare it a champagne watch for lemonade money. I like this so much, I've decided to add it to my own personal collection, and that is the highest compliment I can pay a watch. So I hope you've liked my review of the Watchdives WD1690 Pro. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.